Open houses in Florida are now more open than ever on today's Unnamed Real Estate Podcast. One of the problems with having a morbid sense of humor and a dark personality is you can't really tell whether or not that last statement is over the top or not. So, hi, my name is Charles Ray Dawson. This is the Unnamed Real Estate Podcast, episode 87. I am the associate broker and residential sales manager for ProStar Realty, and we're having a day. So, I hope everybody is doing good out there. Just got off an interview with Jeff Corin, the Corin Lending Team, who's also a licensed real estate agent here at ProStar. He just came over about a month or so ago, already kicking ass, and decided to bring him on the show. So we did a Zoom call recording and everything like that, and hope you guys find that informative. Funny thing is, Jeff was he's licensed in other states, and one of those states is in Florida, and he was planning on flying out to Florida this weekend and catching up on some business out there. And he got his flight canceled, and hotel pretty much canceled his stay too, because, well, Hurricane Ian has pretty much wiped out a good chunk of the West Florida coastline over there. I'm looking at the pictures, and that's pretty tragic and horrific and whatnot. And there's sharks swimming in the middle of the streets and this and that and the other thing. Although it didn't come up on the video and stuff, me and Jeff were like talking about how does that delay a transaction? And he mentioned that if that emergency is declared, all of your transactions pretty much stop until after you get a second appraisal comes through and make sure that the house that the appraiser appraised is still on the lot and still in the same condition that he originally appraised it on. So a lot of thoughts that going out to you guys in Florida. Take care. I hope you prepped. And here's to a quick recovery on that. On the darker note and stuff, I do know a agent out there who works in the Naples, Sarasota area, and he got himself he was advertising a nice $2 million listing and everything like that, and I'm looking at the pictures and feeling that listing envy, and now I'm just resisting sending him a text asking if I can hold his house open this weekend, because, morbid humor. Sometimes, dark humor is like food, not everybody gets it. So, on with the news. So, you guys might have been hearing sevens when it came to interest rates beginning of this week. And yes, indeed, we did bounce off a 7. My lenders that I talked to, including Jeff, all saying that we're pretty much back underneath that. But it's another one of those little spikes, right? Just like earlier on this year, that when we hit that 6s and everybody suddenly hiccuped and stopped, and then we came back down, all right, and we played around, and then we're hanging out in the 5s. We did have that brief hit into the 7s, and like bang, and now we're coming back. But our interest rates right now are really being steered by what's going on in the overall market space. So you're not going to be able to time this. Just don't even try to time this interest rate. Don't start thinking interest rate. Start thinking about what your monthly payment is going to be. Don't try to time that out. Don't think, oh my God, it's as much as I hate to say it, it's almost like shopping for cars. If you notice when you go to a car lot and you're buying a car, they don't talk to you about interest rates. They talk about how much do you want to spend a month. Right, and then you go from there. Oh, you want to spend this much? Well, you're looking at these cars over here. So we're going to be in this dynamic for quite some time. So if you guys are a buyer and getting ready to buy, there's still a lot of really good arguments for buying, right? Especially a house that you're planning on being for 5 to 10 years. Normal reasons why people buy. If there was something along the lines where you could push off for a bit, don't know what the rates are going to be next year. All right, I did have 2 people that I'm talking with and stuff who are looking at both needing to buy roughly at the same time. And I even told them both, like, you don't know where you want to go. You don't really know what you want at this point. You might be better off to rent until you really, really get that dialed in. Because we're not going to be in a situation where it's like, oh, well, I didn't like this house. Let's go buy something 2 years from now. You're going to want to make sure you're buying into a house that you're going to be staying for the next 5 years or so. Now more than ever. So that being said, and this is something else I used to tell people, and I'm still telling them, buy the house like this is going to be the last house you ever buy. All right. Make sure it's going to meet all your needs now and your projected needs in the future, whether or not you're going to have kids leaving, if you're going to have kids being born, if you're going to be getting remarried or married in the first place. You know, it was never a good idea to trade houses. You know, like every 2 or 3 years, oh, wore out the carpet, let's go buy another house. Some people felt comfortable doing that. God bless them. All right, but don't do that, guys. Look for your home, buy your home. All right, so because there's always going to be those people out there on the internet saying, oh no, it's not a recession. You don't know it's a recession until 2 years afterwards, right? Because never remember hearing that in my 51 years of life, that you don't actually know it's a recession until we tell you that it happened a recession 2 years later, because Lord knows news was always willing to declare. I remember CNN trying to tell me once that, although we're not technically in a recession, we really are in recession because we're not growing at the rate of population growth. First time I ever heard that. All right, filed away. Notice I haven't heard that argument in the last 2 years, but they did finally finalize second quarter numbers, and we did indeed have a negative growth of 0.6. That is confirmed. That is officially the second quarter in the can. All right, and we're seeing everything else sort of project out. All right. So CarMax is one of those canary in the coal mine stocks. Right. I'm getting a little out of scope here, but let me explain how this works. CarMax is a stock you want to look at to see what the used car market is doing. All right. Used cars, when those shot up earlier this spring, was a major part of inflation. That was a major impact of that bundle of goods and services that people put together when they're trying to figure out whether or not inflation is going. CarMax has apparently took it in the shorts, and their stock's down. Everybody's stock's down, but they're actually just down for fundamentals. And so that's another recessionary sign. People don't have money to buy used cars right now. All right. So with that, in that interest rate spikes, highest has been in 22 years, which is, pretty much the purchasing lifetime of a lot of people, a lot of cohorts of people. Millennials, yeah, sorry kids, you're taking in the shorts again. All right, Generation Z is coming in. They're 22 years, yeah, they were alive, but were they really coherent? All right, were they really paying attention to the big world around them? All right, so this is the worst market they've ever seen. And the boomers are kicking back going, yeah, my first interest rate was 18%, and I was glad to get it. All right, that's great, Grandpa, but hey, kids are having issues out there right now. So we'll see what those rates stabilize out at. Remember, people used to buy and sell houses all day long at 6%, 7%. All right, they did it by saving money up, all right, getting ready to go. But one of the things I wanted to point out, whenever you hear that analogy, is what were the overall house prices back then related to total take-home money, income. That's the number I think you need to look at. It's like, yeah, it's great to have 6-7% interest rates if the house you're buying is only 3 times your annual take-home, which strangely enough used to be a number that people would use all the time. How much house can I buy? I make $50,000 a year. You can buy a $150,000 house. That's 3 times your annual income. That argument and that little mental image went out the window years and years ago. All right, especially when the interest rates started dropping down hard. So, we'll keep an eye on that. I don't expect our interest rates. Okay, you remember beginning of this year I said I think we're going to be in the 4s, but I don't see it's going above 4s. All right, I was wrong. All right, because back then nobody knew we were going to have this huge impact coming out of, hey, let's throw more money into the economy with another COVID stimmy. And let's have a land war in Asia, or at least Asia adjacent, with this whole Ukraine thing, which kicked everything else. And now this week's Black Swan event that I don't think enough people are paying attention to is the Nordstream pipelines that got blown up. All right, this is Ray going to exactly 180 degrees opposite of what I normally tell you guys. Remember, I always say close off with work your circles. Work the circles you have influence on, right? try not to pay those attention on those way out global issues. That Nord Stream 2 pipeline, the Nord Stream 1 pipeline, the both got blown up, even though they were not being in use, means that now they can't just turn them on when negotiations are over. And I think that's going to have more of an impact on Germany, and it's going to have impact with any industries that rely on German inputs. How does that affect housing here in Phoenix? I think the Florida Hurricane Ian is going to have more of an impact, because now that they have to rebuild Southwest Florida, you're going to start seeing that be impacted by pricing of air conditioning, price of wood, shingles, all that other good stuff that is already impacting our ability to build here. And I think you'll see national effects of that, going on. So at this point, don't know. We're almost at a Ouija board of throwing darts at the wall. So, but let's go to the numbers. All right, and I'll talk to you on the other side of the numbers. Now the numbers for September 28th, 2022. Actives this week are 19,586, up 269 from the previous week. Of those, 2,068 are new listings, just hit the market this week, and that's down 82 from the previous week. Our pendings this week are 1,182, down 89. Under contracts looking for backup is 679, down 89. Contracts with a buyer contingency is 108, up 25. And closings are 1,486, down from the previous week. Coming soon to an MLS near you are 721 new listings. Cromford report numbers. Our demand this week is 81.4. That's up 0.4 from the previous week. And our supply is 77.9, which is up 7.7. So as you can see there, numbers are numbers. Cromford report was showing that uptick in slight uptick in demand, but also being trended with the uptick in supply. So that means that things are sort of picking up from a numbers standpoint. We're still, what the numbers call, technically we're in a balanced market, just like technically we're in a recession and everything else like that. But on the consumer end, it always seems like when you're a buyer, you're racing to get a house under contract right now. It is a lot easier to be a buyer in today's market than it was just a year ago. It's a lot easier to be a buyer in this market than it was back in February and March before the rates hit. It's more expensive to be a buyer now, and that's the problem. But inventories are going up. Houses around the markets. We've talked before over and over again. You're getting an inspection. You're coming at them with a Binzer. And that's just been reporting across the board. Agents and other brokerages were having the same conversation. It's like, wow, everything is, we got agents who don't even know how to respond to a Binzer, who have, they've never been licensed in a place where Benzers come in. They just are telling their seller, yeah, just agree to everything you have to. It's like, no, you don't. All right, things are negotiable when that comes in. All right, don't. All right, and for some reason we have buyers who are reporting they're just sending the entire home inspection over, fix it all. Right, even that thing with the light switch in the master bedroom that's upside down, I want that fixed too. So it's gonna take a while for people to relearn how to do these things. So, but still, we still see the same cities starting to trend upward in demand. The northeast side down to through Tempe and stuff. Those are still getting. We're still seeing the outer areas take the bulk, all right, of the market hits and stuff like that. So as people are getting, and we'll continue on. Any more of that news happens, I'm here every week, and there's a reason for that. So, on other news, Jeff Corn of the Corn Lending team, he is one of our new agents here at ProStar. He's been licensed as a lender for as long as I've been licensed as a real estate agent. I talked him into doing a Zoom call with me today, where we discuss, lending, how we got in, and more along the lines of what are the three things that lenders look at when they're writing you a loan, and how those three impacts, what your rate's going to be. So here is Jeff. All right, Jeff, welcome to the Unnamed Real Estate Podcast. How you doing?
Hey, doing great. Thanks. Good to be here. Thanks, Ray.
So tell the audience a little bit about yourself. I gave a little bit of a feed in right before we started running this clip. So now you're from Arizona, right?
Yeah, that's right. I'm actually fifth generation Arizona. There's not a whole lot of us out here. Let me close this window really quick. Sorry. Yeah, started in the mortgage world in 2010. Graduated from university finance degree in 2009. Welcome to a very unfriendly market. The companies that we're hiring were tended to be mortgage companies, so that's where I got my start.
Mm-hmm. And right now you're an independent broker now.
That's right. In 2018, I just recognized a way to add more value for my clients. Turns out to be less fees, better rates, better service. Direct lenders that I was working with had really over the top conditions, and I'm finding less and less conditions on my borrowers, which makes my life easier, their life easier. It's been a win-win.
All right, sounds good. And then you just got yourself licensed for real estate here this year.
Yeah, the market is just changing out from underneath our feet. So I decided to be nimble. I wanted to get my real estate licenses. I have a ton of former clients who are going to be potentially in need of real estate services. The lead sources that I buy from are generally unrepresented buyers, and
Mm-hmm.
so that gives me a value, to go directly to people who are in need of real estate services.
Okay.
I feel like I can take care of those clients myself or refer them out to people that I work.
All right, sounds good. So, and obviously, this long you're not haven't decided to change into a new industry. What keeps you in? Like weeks like this, months like this. I assume your Florida business just closed up for a couple weeks.
This week it has shut down pretty much. Closings pushed out, and in fact, when a storm gets named, all kinds of things happen in a negative fashion. Where now people who thought they were closing on Friday or Thursday or Wednesday of this week are now having to wait for an additional final inspection from the appraiser.
Mm-hmm.
Would have been unnecessary in any other condition, but a disaster was declared, and
Mm-hmm.
in doing so, it requires a final inspection from the appraiser. Make sure the roof's still there. Make sure.
Yeah, go ahead. I got a friend of mine who I think I referred you to him, Joe Muni. He's in Naples, in Sarasota area in Florida, and on his Facebook page, he just showed his new listing. It's like a $2 million listing on the waterfront in Naples area. I am so resisting sending him a text asking him if I could hold an open house this weekend, or is it just going to be redundant?
Um, that's unfortunate because they got hit really hard.
I noticed that. Dave and Ann, my in-laws, once you did the purchase for a couple of years ago, they left Sarasota to move here to Phoenix. So
Good move.
I still haven't texted Ann, asked how, you glad you moved? How are your friends doing?
But in your previous question, I do see. I mean, I'm fully locked in to the financial world, and now becoming more locked into the real estate world. I don't have a plan B. I think you're similar to that. There's no plan B for you as well. We're gonna ride it out and find the strengths
Well,
in the market that we have.
here's a funny thing. I think since we both started in 2010 on opposite sides and everything like that, since we both started back then, this is like what we grew up on.
Mm-hmm.
All right. And I was joking a couple of years ago when we hit a normal market. It's like, I don't know how to work in a normal market. It's like all I know is short sell hell, and people trying to get qualified by those old qualification things that just came out like, right after the crash, and the Congress came in and said, okay, we're doing this, this, and this now. And, trying to get people qualified at that point in the documentation. It just seems to me that like the documentation qualifications got a little bit easier, but didn't go, here's a mirror, you fogged it, congratulations, here 500,000, like it was when we got in trouble back in the day.
Well, I mean, I'm not sure if you got a mortgage in that time period. Let's just say like from 2004, 2008, or 2007.
Mm-hmm.
I did, and they raked me over the coals. I didn't have an easy go at all during that time period.
What were you doing back then?
Back then, I was working for APS,
Okay.
and I mean, good credit, good down payment, and still had the same rigmarole to get qualified for a home loan. Surprised the heck out of me that it was that easy for
Hmm.
anybody. Didn't It was quite shocking to me. So when I started in the industry in 2010, they had put a few extra layers of conservative, you know, hoops through, but it really wasn't terrible. The
Hmm.
same that were qualified before were qualified now. Fast forward, being through the direct lender, working the direct lender world for probably 5 years, 6 years, well, call it 7, 8 years. Um, that just became normal. All those normal hoops. When I became an independent broker, all of a sudden, things that we had to have to close, we just didn't need anymore. Transcripts. It was just an absolute guarantee we had to have those. Didn't matter if it was April in the tax season when IRS was backed up 2 to 3 weeks.
Hmm.
You didn't get transcripts, and you couldn't have the borrower go get transcripts. So you're just waiting and waiting for transcripts. Fast forward to my independent um, my business and independent broker world. It's very rare that they require a transcript. Nowadays, I'm seeing it more for self-employed. That was more when COVID hit.
Hmm.
When COVID hit, they really hammered the self-employed folks. I mean, to the point where some wholesale brokers or some wholesale companies, lenders, required a 780 credit score and 20% down, even to start the process,
Hmm.
which is ridiculous. I mean, it's quite a high standard to hit for anybody. That's one of the things that have been relaxed over the last year. Self-employed is not quite so difficult to get qualified.
Now, with a person who's self-employed, a lot of times there's okay. I don't want to say that they're cooking the books or that there are two books, but there's their income and then what's the IRS thinks their income is.
Yeah.
So if they've gone a couple of years, running most of their costs and everything like that through their small business or whatever entity they're set up at, like their phone, their car lease, that kind of stuff. How do you unwind all of that to get them to the point where you can qualify them for a loan?
So that's one of my biggest frustrations as well. When they did come down hard on the self-employed in 2020, early 2020, it was disturbing because, first of all, the mortgage industry is just a series of, you know, they get burned, they pull their hand back, and then they just don't want to get burned again. And it doesn't matter what the reasons were or if that made sense at all.
Mm-hmm.
And now, to me, it didn't make sense with the self-employed folks because their biggest concern was they were going to cook the books. As a self-employed person myself, I know it's impossible to cook the books. The way that you earn your income, it is what it is, and if you've done it for several years, it stays consistent. Your write-offs are what reduce your income. So
Mm-hmm.
let's say you make $100,000 a year. You write off $70,000. Your income, according to the IRS and the underwriter, is now $30,000. Any way you cook it. Now you can add back certain elements. You can add back mileage on a vehicle. You can add back depreciation. Some people have that. Some people don't have that. It just depends on what kind of business they have. But the key is, um, people. The biggest argument is what you just described. It's like I make 100,000 a year. Unfortunately, from the information that your CPA is, sharing on your taxes with your write-offs, you don't make 100,000. You make 30,000. Now, whatever you're paying taxes on is what you're going to be qualified for. That's
Mm-hmm.
your qualified income. And there's some ways to get around that because the most conservative route would be to average 2 years, your last 2 years income. Now, if you've been in business for 5 years, we can take your most recent year. We just have to show proof you've been in business for 5 years.
Okay.
And usually people, their best year A strong year is their most recent one uh, after COVID. So it's actually a good time for self-employed to buy or to use their qualified income.
Sounds good. So, all right. So, if somebody's out there and who's self-employed and stuff like that, would you encourage them to like, hey, give you a call saying I'm planning on buying not next week, but like in 6 months or before they start filing their taxes, like the year before, like right now, perhaps when they're just
I,
sort of wrapping up the year and they're going to be looking spring of next year?
I think that really is the most difficult borrower to get qualified, simply because they, per our conversation earlier, they think their income is 100,000.
Right.
That's going into this. And when I explain whenever I hear when I'm starting an application with a self-employed, they say, I'm a self-employed person. The next thing out of my mouth is, send me your last 2 years taxes. Like literally that stops the application.
Mm-hmm.
Send me this. That's going to restart the application, because many people obviously show a lot less income than they actually gross.
Mm-hmm.
So we know income is one of the biggest aspects of qualifying for a home loan. There's three, and we'll go over those in a moment. But yeah, when we're looking at self-employed, the first second that topic is broached, application stops. We have to then determine your income. The tendency in my experience is that people are demonstrating a much lower income than they actually have. 6 months to a year prior to is when I love speaking, to any applicant. It really, if we know we're good at that point, then we know if we stay status quo, everything will be great at the time we start again. If we have some bugs to iron out, 6 months, well, 3 to 6 months, we can get out just about every credit bug. But sometimes things are more serious than that, and I send it to my credit repair people. That can help us out quite a bit.
Mm-hmm.
To me, credit score is not as important as well, we have fairly minimal requirements for a minimum credit score. Getting in the door with a 580 credit score pretty much opens it up to just about everybody, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
The biggest problem thereafter is having wanting to improve the credit score only for the rate aspect, because credit score is a direct relation to rate. And people ask me all the time, does it matter if I have reserves? Does it matter? Does anything else affect rate? Zero. Nothing else affects rate except for credit score.
So a buyer out there who's looking at CNN.com finance or something like that, and they're seeing a little blip up there that the rate is 6.5, 7, whatever it is today. They need to know that that's an average. That's not their number, and they can't run around quoting that number to anybody. They really need to talk to a lender like you,
Mm-hmm.
get the credit pulled, right, and find out what the rate at their credit score is going to be. What's is there a high end of the credit score? Is it, I mean, does it like go infinite and like for some reason it just, or does it max out at a specific number? Like, does it
That,
max out at 1,000 or, what's the max a score?
that's a great question. And just to go back to what you were just saying, your credit, we'll start that 740. You're not going to reap too many benefits above that.
Okay.
740, anything over 740 is going to get treated pretty much the same by every lender. Where I've seen an improvement is at 760. If that borrower does require mortgage insurance, I'm seeing an improvement at 760, better than 740. But yeah, the credit score is not infinite. They say it's it can be anywhere from the low 400s to 850. I want to say I've pulled a few thousand credit reports, and I've never seen a credit score. As you know, we use a tri-merge, so we have all three bureaus. I've seen several in the 820s. I've never seen a mid score in the 820s. The most common highest mid score I've ever seen is about 800, where we might see a 790, an 801, and an 825.
Mm-hmm.
I rarely, like, I hear tell, like, the great white whale, that's possible to get, an average of, 830. I've never seen it.
Mm-hmm.
I've worked very hard on my credit as well, and I've never approached 820 or anything for a mid score.
Okay. And a mid score is a term used for the average of the tri-merge, those
Well,
three different credit agencies you run that through.
yeah,
It becomes the mid score.
the tri-merge is not an average. We have to use, let's just say we have an 820 high score and 803, and the mid score is 810.
Mm-hmm.
We have to use the score that's in the middle.
Got it.
Even if it's 801, 801, and 805, your mid score is 801. So
Okay.
if two are the same and there's one higher, you use the lowest score. It's all baked against the borrower.
Now, I remember this is something that I came across just a couple of years ago that really sort of shocked me, is that you have a different credit score depending on the type of loan you're looking for.
Yeah.
So if you're walking around and you go to what'smycreditscore.com or something like that, and they give you a number, it is actually different. They're looking at different from a home purchase, credit card application, or car payment purchase.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. I'm not an expert in the types of credit. I do know there are drastic differences between Credit Karma, we'll say, or the credit card app, or website where you're looking, they show you your credit score.
mm-hmm.
It's been my experience that those are, I'm going to say 15 to 20% better than a mortgage credit score.
Mm-hmm.
My thinking behind that is, the scores used in the credit card and auto loan industries, they use the models that really focus on the last 2 to 3 years. And the last 2 to 3 years, anybody can have a better 2 or 3 years and have a nice improvement on their credit score. A mortgage credit score will go back 7 years, and they will take every data point. So more data points over more time generally equals a lower score.
So that means you're going to be at a position with, if you're 25 years or younger, very limited amount of data there, especially if you're just like coming out of college and mom and dad have been paying for everything. You haven't, you don't have a credit line, you don't have trade lines, you don't have anything going for you. That I could see how somebody could really be in a rough position. What do you do when you got the 26-year-old who just comes in, just landed his first great job, grandma or whatever paid for college, and he's got 6 months in his first employment?
Sometimes those are easier, to be quite honest. The key is, like, what I see is those people who are ambitious. That's a different type of 20-year-old. Not all 20-year-olds are buying houses. The 20-year-olds that I'm seeing are recent college graduates who don't have to have a 2-year work history in order to qualify for a home,
Mm-hmm.
due to the fact that we can use their education as their work history if they're working in their field.
Okay.
Let's say a new nurse,
Mm-hmm.
maybe graduated at 21. She doesn't have to have that 2 years experience required with every other loan, VA, conventional, or FHA. They
Mm-hmm.
all require 2 years minimum of employment history. In this case, we can use your diploma and your unofficial transcripts, and they substitute for your 2 years work experience. And what I'm also seeing is a lot of these folks are getting authorized user accounts from their parents.
Mm-hmm.
So now basically getting the credit history of their parents who have had like an amazingly long and amazing credit history. You assign that credit history to an 18-year-old or a 19-year-old, then they have their parents' history, and they can qualify a lot of times based on that.
Yeah, that's something I heard of a couple of years ago. I've been encouraging all my friends to do when their kid hits 18. It's like you don't have to give them the card.
No,
You
you're
can put
not.
that in the safe. You can just put their name on it, cut their card up in front of them or something like that, and just say you're earning credit right now, piggybacking over. So
Mhm.
any parents out there who got kids coming at that age and stuff, and like trying to figure out what do you want to do to help your kids out, that's a great way to do it, especially on the credit side. So,
It's quite effective, especially where it comes to mortgages.
hmm yeah. I wouldn't necessarily do it for the kid that's not going to college or anything like that. When it's just like, working at McDonald's 2 nights a week and, playing video games and smoking pot down in your basement, but when you get those hard chargers, you know,
The responsible ones, yeah, absolutely.
yeah. So, yeah, I like to think I was a slow starter, but in reality, I was just goofing off most of the time. But, so, and credit can be repaired, and you got people that you talk to on that. If a person Is there the worst case scenario? There's no way in hell you're ever going to repair your credit ever scenario. Is there always a way that somebody can start getting their financial life back in order? And what do you think that first step would be?
There's always a way. And what me and my credit repair guy always discuss are the biggest aspects of credit repair. They call it the
Hmm.
two: money and motivation.
Okay.
Um, Money salves a lot of the wounds of credit because there's always in a way to reach out to those past creditors, possibly settle accounts for less, get it deleted. There's many different ways to improve credit in the short and long run. I've seen miracles happen. I really have. And we might want to consider getting my credit repair guy on the show one time because he's works some magic. Just one, and I try to temper my clients um, um, the goals of what we're trying to achieve, or at least temper um, the magic that he can do. But the key is in one situation with about I think 10 days he was able to for free improve someone's credit by 120 points.
Hmm.
And yeah, that's we. I don't want to go out and say, hey, look, he can do this in every case, but in certain cases, I mean, he changed their world financially. The credit score, as their interest rate based on the credit score zoomed through really improved. And it was basically him giving them the information of what to do. They did it and executed it, and it was just a simple phone call. I'll have him, reach out to you to get on the show to explain how he did that.
That would be great.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I think there's a lot of people out there. Do you think people generally think their credit is better or worse if they don't know what the number is and you just asked them, hey, if we took 100 people who didn't know what their credit was, made them guess, and then ran their numbers, do you think the average would be worse or higher than what it actually is?
That's a very good question because I see both sides all the time.
Hmm.
I see my credit is terrible and it turns out to be quite good. I see my credit is very good and it turns out to be terrible.
Hmm.
I would say it's somewhere in between there, obviously. The short story is people don't know what their credit is often,
Hmm.
probably too often. I've had people that were just, solid gold 800, you knew it, and pull their credit, and they recently had a late mortgage. Well, they had it on set it and forget it, direct withdrawal from their bank account. Something happened to their housing expenses, their property taxes increased, which made their payment increase. And then all of a sudden, they're having 30-day lates consecutive. And you can just tell it was heartbreaking. They would never in a million let this happen.
I had that happen to me once where, with young kid in my 20s, and it was like a credit card payment. And it was probably like February. It was like a short month or something like that. Or I got distracted. I thought I made the payment Didn't see the notice saying, hey, you didn't make February's payment, but I make March payment, April payment, go on and go forth. One day I literally go in there to like cash a check or something. The cashier just looks at me and goes, hey, do you want to pay off this debt that you have? I was like, what debt? And she's like, well, you didn't make your May payment. All right. And it was like, so when I made my next payment, they used that to pay off the previous one. So guess who gets another late?
In our business, they call those rolling 30s.
Yeah. And I got caught in the rolling 30. And, I just started getting a little loud. Next, I saw the security guard starting to float over that. And I said, okay, take it out of savings, make the payment. Thanks for letting me know about this. If you'd let me know, And she said something about, well, we send you a letter, and like most of the letters you send me are trying to get me to sign up for $10,000 worth of life insurance. Yeah, but hey, kids, if you're watching this, read everything that comes from your bank, even the free life insurance quotes, because you never know when they're going to be sending you a little notice going, hey, you mispaid by 50 cents or something. I will be happy to charge you for that. So,
and it's an important point, because the difference in the payment was like $40.
Yeah.
And that $40 a month, ruined his credit for at least 6 to 7 years.
Mm-hmm.
Late mortgages really slowly come off. There's some things you can fix in the credit world.
Mm-hmm.
Lates are not. Lates are very hard to fix. And I've had experience. I've had positive experiences when you have an account for 10 years. And then there's one late mortgage payment. You can call them up and say, I don't know what happened, that, I was out of town, or like sometimes they'll give you a free pass and they'll wipe that out. However, if that stays on, credit cards, anything, credit installment debt, mortgage payments are just really bad on your credit, and they take time. Time is the only thing that's going to get rid of those.
All right. So now you make me more paranoid.
Well, my whole life is paranoid, because these things can pop up in the process of a mortgage that you're working hard to close, and then pop up during the mortgage process, and it could kill the deal.
Right. So you said there was 3 elements, and credit was like the first one, or income?
Yeah.
What are we on now?
Yeah. Let me give you in every application, I try to give as much information as I possibly can. Borrower. The 3 elements, and I break it down. It's quite simple if you look at it elementary. Credit. Some say it's the most important aspect of the application, because if you have credit, the only thing you're then looking at is how much you can afford.
Got it.
We're determining at that point, how much can you afford on a monthly basis. Everything we do is in the mortgage world is a snapshot of a monthly situation. So we look at your gross income, that's your income before taxes, and we compare that to your financed debts. That's your minimum payments on credit cards, student debt, auto loans. You got a UTV, like a little 4-wheeler or something like that. Anything that goes on your credit is going to go against your debt to income. We determine that. The final thing is assets for your down payment and reserves. And if we're good on all 3 of those, we're buying a house. Okay.
And with assets and reserves, we can also include gifts from family members on certain loans. What's an asset? What's not an asset? If I have money or stocks in a 401k, asset?
Stocks in a 401k, 100% an asset, can be accessed for first-time home buyers. No penalty to access.
Okay. And regular stocks, weird situation came up a couple months ago with another agent. They were trying to figure out how to use as an asset acreage in another state.
Real estate assets are kind of a negative, unfortunately, in the mortgage world, because now all of a sudden, when we have another house or land in another state, or even in this state, Now, what gets added into debt against debt to income is the property taxes or any debt associated
Got
with
it.
that property.
Got it.
So, not altogether good news when we own other properties. Um, Now, anything that can be converted easily, I want to say like a used automobile right now. You can always use, you can even liquidate gold assets,
Hmm.
but thing has to be documented. No cash, like you can't accept a bill of sale for cash.
No
There's gonna,
mattress money?
you can never use mattress money under any circumstances. It's the most evil word in the mortgage industry.
Yeah. For the viewers and everything, like mattress money is the money that is in a mattress. It's not in a bank account. It can't be sourced. Funny thing about the gold thing, I had a guy who literally brought $50,000 worth of gold coins into the loan office
Mhm.
as proof of assets, but he didn't have any documentation that it was actually his.
Mhm.
He only had physical possession, and that was not good enough, for
Yeah.
the lender at that time. So,
Well, I mean, theoretically, all he would really need to do is document the liquidation,
mhm.
and old dealer will give you documentation. And what will be needed after that is like kind of an assayer. There'll have to be some sort of a separate valuation of
Mhm.
that,
Yeah.
and it's got to jive with what got liquidated. And then technically, you could deposit in your account and
Mhm.
use it for a home purchase.
I had a buyer once use jewelry. I mean, she has a couple really really nice pieces, and she like literally went down to. She lived out of Beverly Hills and was buying land here, and she wound up going down to a jeweler of the seller's choice, right, and just to get everything assessed.
Hmm.
And so, yeah, a lot of
Yeah,
different ways to skin those cats out there.
it's true. I mean, you can do as long as it's documentable, you can
Mm-hmm.
use mortgage.
All right.
Um, Bitcoin is one of those sticky subjects where some lenders won't use it under any circumstances. Some will allow it if it's properly documented.
Okay. And I'm going to assume, and this is probably just my brain just spinning out. Um, if I have put up, basically stated, here's my investment account. These are my assets available. I don't have to worry about a margin call at any time. Like 5 years later, we use that to prove assets. I didn't have to liquidate or anything like that. Now the market's tanked. I don't have to worry about a margin call coming in saying, "Hey, you need to cough up X amount of money to right size this thing," or is it just that snapshot in time?
Are we talking about like qualified income aspect and using like an investment income?
No, yeah, that'd be a really good way of doing it. I know some people who are basically living off their investments, or I've always wondered, because as a lender, you're taking a snapshot of the person. You just said that it was a month,
Yeah.
right? As a lender, your risks are 6 months later they get cancer, the borrower or gets unemployed, or is that just baked into the cake with the interest rates, or there's no time that a lender can ever come to you with a performing loan and go, "Hey, we noticed you just want your job, we're going to want all our money back." That's
I've never heard of that scenario taking place.
mm-hmm.
I mean, fortunately or unfortunately, at the signing table and when the keys transfer,
Mm-hmm.
it it's a forgotten story. That's just been my experience. I've never seen anything come back. Now, where you will come into issues is if something goes wrong.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have, let's say you have a first payment default, which is quite possibly the worst thing in the mortgage industry, mortgage servicing industry.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you have a first payment default, that loan becomes worth nothing. I mean, selling it even like what they call scratch and dent. We can go into that in another episode, but the whole basis behind most mortgages is that they're going to sell that as a product to a servicer.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if they have a first payment default, that loan is going to be an issue, and that they're going to go and turn over every leaf to find out what went wrong.
Yeah, and they can come right back to you as a loan originator, the
As
first
me,
person. Yeah.
They'll
And
come back to me. They'll come back to the underwriter.
you guys
They'll
got to buy it back from them. Yeah.
in this case, as an independent broker, I don't have, that's not my, none of this situation pertains to me personally,
Mm-hmm.
other than going to ask me what went wrong because it doesn't, something didn't compute. Why did we give this person a mortgage if they can't make their first payment?
Right.
If there was any discrepancies, any fibs, any, that'll come out.
And that's why the loan package is about this thick.
And the times are, and the processors are sometimes like tough as nails.
Got it.
They have, I have a very good, I think, feeling for what we can call BS. Someone will perpetrate something, but theirs are quite good as well, and it's very difficult to put one past them.
Okay. So, last question for you, and then we can wrap up. And I get from a lot of clients I already sent them that 5 months ago. Why do I have to send it to them again? Explain to the borrowers, why are you asking for the same doc that they think they already sent you?
Yeah, no, and it happens in certain circumstances. The client is correct. Like they sent that document. When you're talking about me as previously a one-man shop, I do have an assistant now. I have said, can you please resend that to me? It's just kind of like a human condition where when someone sends you an item, let's say, I say, hey, can you send me a bank statement? They send it over. And then maybe they send you more information via text. And then maybe they send upload things to the Dropbox, which is another source. There's multiple different ways. And sometimes they have multiple emails. So they may have theoretically sent it, but sometimes it's easier just to ask them to resend it. Because, say, hey, look, you probably did send it, but you've sent me from 4 different sources. It's not that easy for me to go and track it down. Now that's one one that could be potentially my fault. Now, typically there's a lot of documents being asked of a borrower. And in my experience, they did not likely send that document because they sent me 3 documents and there was from 2 different accounts, but they only sent me 2 months from one and 1 from the other. And it just slipped through. There's a million scenarios that could go into it. And it could be their fault. It could be my fault. It could be anyone's fault. I just say, just send it, send it again. And anything can happen in the process. And it's sometimes confusing, and you wouldn't believe how incredibly complicated. I had an extraordinarily complicated scenario recently where I think I discussed it with you. I had a traveling nurse who had 18 different employments in the last 2 years. Now, the traditional methods of me asking for documents, like, hey, send me your W-2s, send me your final pay stubs from each employer. She was working 20 hours, something like 16 hours a day. She had 4 kids. And I understandably was the last person that she was going to deal with. She was getting me my things, but it was taking me weeks. We did close, but very complicated way to source. And in that scenario, she had sent me several documents that she had to resend, but just due to the complexity of the file, easy files, you should never really have that issue. A normal W-2 borrower with one job, it should be just, everything should be, provided at the pre-qual stage.
All right. How do people get a hold of you?
You can give me at 602-799-8052. And always a good idea, if you're interested at all in the next 6 to 12 months, give me a call. we'll get out ahead of any issues that we have. If we're perfect, then we just know if we stay perfect, we're buying a house.
All right. Sounds good. Jeff, thanks for your time. Thanks for coming on my show.
Yeah, good to be here, Ray.
All right. Talk to you later, sir.
All right. Now, if any of you guys want to get a hold of Jeff, he is always happy to talk, always happy to answer any questions. His credit repair guy, definitely want to get on the show later on so we can talk to him about, get more into the ins and outs of how credit's earned, how it gets impacted by various things. Because ultimately credit is such it's a big part of your financial life. It's more than just buying and selling houses. It affects your credit cards. It can actually affect your employment. A couple of years ago, when HR departments, especially in jobs that were related to the finances, used to require employees as part of the onboarding to get a credit check done. And I had people ask me, like, why do they want to know my credit score? Why do they want my credit score? And it's like, your credit score is almost directly tied in to the drama in your life. And it was a good way for employers in the aughts and stuff like that to screen out. Basically, people with great credit scores are less likely to have their ex come into the lobby and start screaming for them during business hours, and vice versa, right? Now, hardships happen, turnarounds happen, medical bills happen. These can all, like the story he was telling about the, having the direct payment of your mortgage coming out of your account, then all of a sudden your taxes and insurance goes up, and now you're paying $40 less. You can see the impact of that. It's one of the reasons why I never liked that whole, you just take you just sign up and they'll take the money out of my account and everything's cool, everything's fine. I never have to think about it again. Well, that's what happens when you outsource your thinking, right? Or in my case, credit card back in my 20s, I get letters from, from that bank all the freaking time. And 9 times out of 10, it's garbage. At one point, I realized, hey, I didn't make my freaking February payment, right? I didn't learn about that for 3 months later, because they're not going to go out of the way and go, hey, do you actually want to make this payment? They were happy to take my money every month that I kept paying and everything, but because that one thing was sitting there, right, that rolled up a list of charges that really sort of screwed me in the long run. So these are things that could be happening right now. I mean, seriously, how many, right, just as a little financial aside, remember, Ray's not a financial advisor, all right, how many quiet debts are coming out of your credit card because you signed up for something 6 months ago, a year ago? Maybe you signed up for that little freebie. Maybe you signed up for that game you don't play anymore, and World of Warcraft is still out there charging you $16 a month for a World of Warcraft account that you don't use anymore. All right? You need to keep an eye on these things. How many other little automatic deductions are happening, for products and services you don't use anymore, right? So maybe once a month, just like you used to balance your checkbook. All right, so for everybody under the age of 40, a checkbook was a little folder of checks, sort of like your paycheck. For those guys, you used to get those before you went to direct deposit, and you would hand write out the check, and then you go to the ledger side of it and you write down, I just wrote a check number 123 for Southwest Gas for $297. And that's how it's called balancing your checkbook. Maybe every month or so ago, you can put this on your calendar to remind you today's the day. I go through, I look at my bank statements and make sure I don't have that World of Warcraft payment that's going out there. Or, hey, you know what? I quit watching Disney Plus, or I signed up for Disney Plus for free 6 months. Right, when I got my new Verizon phone, wound up never watching Disney Plus after I finished the Avengers, and now it's about to hit me with that charge. Or is there anybody out there who's still paying for their Norton antivirus for a computer they don't own anymore, but it's still renewing every year? And so maybe a financial audit like that is in place for you guys. So just a little friendly advice for the week. I'm tired. I am hungry. It is Thursday. You guys have a great weekend, right? Watch your pets and children around the water, right? I don't think we're getting any rains, but, drive safely anyways, right? Don't drink and park, because park accidents cause children. Work your circles, and you guys have a great weekend. Jeff's contact information is going to be at the end